Chapter 1. The Little Boy in the Shadows. A cold London night. A hungry boy. A mother singing softly in the dark. Charlie pulled his thin coat tighter around his small body. The air was cold, cold enough to make his fingers numb, his breath white in the dim candlelight. He sat on the wooden floor of their tiny room, knees pulled to his chest. The sound of raindrops tapped against the window. The streets outside smelled of wet stone and smoke, but inside, it was even worse. No food, no fire, no laughter. Only his mother's voice, soft, fading, almost a whisper. Hush, my darling. Hush. Don't cry. Charlie looked at her. She was lying on the old bed, her hands trembling, her eyes full of something he didn't understand. Sadness? Fear? Pain? She was once a singer, a beautiful singer. Crowds used to watch her, but now there were no crowds, only Charlie, only Sidney, his older brother, curled up in the corner, fast asleep. Charlie's stomach growled. It had been 2 days since he had eaten properly. A piece of stale bread, a little water. That was all. But hunger was nothing new. It had always been there, like a shadow, following him wherever he went. He stood up, careful not to wake his brother, and walked toward his mother. "Mama," he whispered. She didn't answer. She only stared at the ceiling, her lips moving silently. Charlie touched her hand. It was cold. Something was wrong. He could feel it. A house with no father. Charlie's father, Charles Chaplin Sr., had been a singer too, a famous one. But he had disappeared from their lives long ago. He loved drinking more than he loved his family. At first, he sent money. Then, nothing. Charlie remembered his face only in pieces. A big man with a loud voice, a smell of tobacco on his clothes, a laugh that used to shake the walls. But his laugh had faded, just like the coins in their pockets. Without him, they had nothing. And as his mother's sickness grew worse, so did their hunger. Charlie was only 5, but he already knew what suffering was. The night, everything changed. A knock at the door. Charlie jumped. His heart pounded. Sidney woke up, rubbing his tired eyes. Their mother barely moved. The door creaked open. A man stood there, tall, serious, wearing a dark coat. Behind him, a woman in a long dress. "Mrs. Chaplin?" the woman said gently. Charlie's mother nodded weakly. "I'm afraid. We have to take the children," the man said. Silence. Then, "No." Charlie ran to his mother's side, grabbing her arm. "We won't go." But his mother didn't fight. She only nodded again. Tears filled Charlie's eyes as the man took his hand, pulling him away. Sidney held on to him, but it was no use. They were too small, too weak. As they stepped outside, Charlie looked back. His mother lay still, staring at the ceiling. He didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of a life full of struggle, pain, and something else. A dream, a poor boy, lost and forgotten. But inside him burned a fire that would one day change the world. Chapter 2. Laughter in the Dark. A stone building. Iron bars on the windows. The smell of old soup in the air. This was not a home. This was the workhouse. And Charlie was just another hungry child in a world that didn't care. Charlie's feet shuffled against the cold floor. His hands, small, bony, gripped his brother Sidney's arm. The workhouse was loud, filled with the sounds of crying, coughing, and shouting. Next, a man in a long coat barked. Charlie and Sidney stepped forward. A pair of rough hands grabbed them, pulling them apart. "No!" Charlie screamed. He kicked. He fought. But it didn't matter. The man shoved him down the hall. Sidney, his only family, was gone. And now, Charlie was alone. The children with no names. They called it a home for the poor. But it wasn't a home. The workhouse was where families disappeared, where children became numbers. It was where boys like Charlie were forgotten. Food was rare. A bowl of thin soup, a small piece of bread. Hunger was a constant shadow, gnawing at his stomach. Every day, the same routine. Wake up, work, eat, if you could call it eating, sleep, repeat. And the people? Hard, cruel. The men who ran the place had no patience for a boy like Charlie. If he spoke too loudly, punishment. If he laughed, punishment. If he cried, no one cared. But Charlie didn't break. No. Charlie watched. He watched the other boys, how they walked, how they talked. He watched the old men, how they grumbled and coughed. He watched the mean guards, how their faces twisted when they were angry. And then he started copying them. One day, at dinner, he made a face. His lips curled, his eyes crossed, his body swayed like the old man who always complained about the soup. A boy next to him snorted. Another boy giggled. And for the first time in weeks, Charlie smiled. Laughter. It was small at first, but then it grew. And in the middle of the cold, gray workhouse, something magical happened. The forgotten children laughed. A moment of light in the darkness. But laughter didn't last long in a place like this. One evening, Charlie sat by himself, knees pulled to his chest. The hall was quiet, too quiet. Then, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. The master of the workhouse. A large man with sharp eyes and a voice like thunder. "You think you're funny, boy," he growled. Charlie's heart pounded. The man knelt down, grabbing Charlie's chin roughly. You think this place is a stage? Charlie didn't answer. He knew what happened to boys who answered back. Get up! The man yanked Charlie to his feet. Let's see how funny you are after a night in the cold. He dragged Charlie through the halls. The doors groaned as they opened. And just like that, he was thrown outside. The night air was sharp, the ground wet. The door slammed behind him. Charlie pulled his thin shirt tighter around his chest. He looked up at the sky, dark, endless, filled with stars. His stomach ached. His hands trembled. And yet, a thought came to him. One day, they will laugh, and I will make them laugh. A boy, cold, hungry, forgotten. But inside him, a fire burned, and one day, the whole world would see it. Chapter 3. The stage, his only escape. A mother, weak and fading. A boy, standing in the dark. One moment, one chance. A stage waiting for him, and a world that had no idea what was coming. Charlie sat by his mother's bed, watching her thin hands tremble. The room was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made the world feel smaller. Her voice, once so full of life, was now just a whisper. Charlie, you can do it. She looked at him, eyes tired, but full of something else. Hope. Charlie swallowed hard. His heart pounded in his chest. Could he? The thought of standing in front of people, performing, made his hands sweat. But his mother's voice stayed with him. You can do it. And so, on a night that would change his life forever, Charlie walked towards his fate. The music hall. The room smelled of old wood and dust. The stage lights flickered, casting long shadows. The noise of the crowd echoed in his ears. People laughing, shouting, waiting. Sydney stood beside him backstage. Just do what you always do, Charlie, he whispered. Make them laugh. Charlie took a deep breath. Then, his name was called. The curtain lifted, and suddenly, silence. Charlie froze. The lights were too bright. The stage felt too big. The faces in the crowd blurred together. His legs wouldn't move. His mouth wouldn't open. Then, laughter. But it wasn't for him. It was for the act before him. A woman was singing, her voice cracking at the high notes. People in the crowd chuckled. A man threw a coin onto the stage. Charlie felt something stir inside him. A spark. And then, something happened. He stepped forward, his small frame trembling under the lights. He lifted his hands, mimicking the singer's dramatic movements. He twisted his face, copying her exaggerated expressions. The audience noticed. A giggle. then a chuckle. Then roars of laughter. Charlie kept going. He stumbled like he was drunk, pretending to fall. The crowd erupted. He wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time in his life, people were laughing with him, not at him, and it felt like magic. A star is born? Backstage, the manager grabbed Charlie's shoulders. "Where did you learn that, boy?" Charlie shrugged. "Nowhere." The man grinned. "Come back tomorrow. Let's see if you can do it again." Charlie's heart raced. He had done it. He had made them laugh. He ran home, breathless, excitement buzzing through his veins. But when he opened the door, everything stopped. His mother was sitting in the dark, staring at the wall. She didn't move. She didn't speak. Sydney stood beside her, eyes full of worry. "She's getting worse, Charlie." Charlie's hands tightened into fists. Laughter on the stage, but silence at home. Fame, but no food. A future, but a mother slipping away. One moment, one night. The stage had saved him. But could it save his family? Chapter 4. A Ticket to America. A Ticket to the Future. A cold wind, a crowded port, a boy with nothing but a dream. Charlie stood on the dock, his fingers gripping the rough edge of his coat. Before him, a massive ship rose from the water, its dark hull cutting through the morning mist. Smoke curled from its chimneys, the scent of coal thick in the air. America. The word itself felt unreal. A land of opportunity, of endless streets, of flashing lights and golden stages, a place where a poor boy could become something more. Charlie swallowed hard. Was he ready? A stranger with an offer. It had happened so quickly. One day he was performing in small theaters across London, barely making enough to eat. The next, a man with a sharp suit and a thick American accent was shaking his hand. Charlie Chaplin? Charlie hesitated. He wasn't used to hearing his name spoken with respect. "Yes?" "I've got an offer for you, kid. Ever heard of America?" Charlie's heart pounded. Of course, he had heard of America. The man smiled. "I want you to come. There's a show, a big one. We need someone funny, someone with talent." Charlie could hardly believe it. A real job, a real stage, in America. Then the smile faded from the man's face. "But I won't lie to you, son. It's risky. If you fail, you'll have nothing." Nothing? Charlie had already known nothing. Hunger, fear, homelessness. If all he had to do was take a risk, then it was no risk at all. I'll go. A Ticket to the Future. The ticket felt heavy in his hands. He had never owned something so valuable. Sydney was the first to see it. "Charlie, are you serious?" Charlie nodded. "You don't know anyone there." "I know myself," Charlie said. Sydney sighed. He was the older brother, the responsible one. He had always tried to protect Charlie. But this time, there was nothing he could do. "Just don't forget where you come from," he said finally, pulling Charlie into a hug. Charlie didn't answer. How could he forget? The streets, the workhouse, their mother's fading voice. He would carry those memories forever. Saying goodbye. The ship groaned as it prepared to leave. Charlie turned one last time, searching for something familiar. His old life was behind him. The workhouse, the cold streets, the empty nights, and yet his heart ached. Sydney stood far away, watching him, the only family Charlie had left. Charlie lifted a hand. Sydney nodded. No words were needed. Then, the ship's horn sounded. The great vessel shuddered as it pulled away from the dock. Charlie stood at the rail, his fingers tightening. London grew smaller and smaller. And ahead, a new world, a new life. A poor boy crossing an ocean, stepping into the unknown. He had nothing, but maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something greater. Chapter 5. The Tramp is Born. A small studio, a worn-out dressing room, a mirror reflecting a man who was still a boy inside. Charlie held the tiny mustache between his fingers, staring at his reflection. The baggy pants, too big. The tight jacket, too small. The bowler hat, tilted just right. He twirled the cane in his hands. This wasn't just a costume. This was him. Or maybe it was all of them. The poor, the forgotten, the ones who had nothing but hope. The tramp had been born. And soon, the world would know his name. A man with no words, but 1,000 emotions. The director called, "Lights!" Charlie stepped onto the stage. The cameras rolled. He didn't have a script. No one told him what to do, but he didn't need words. He walked, feet turned out, swinging his cane. He stumbled. He tipped his hat. A gentleman, but also a fool. The people behind the camera watched, waiting. Then he slipped on a banana peel. Silence. Then laughter. Real laughter. Not polite chuckles, not forced smiles. Deep, loud belly laughter. Something electric ran through Charlie's veins. This was it. He was the tramp. A man who made the world laugh while hiding his own tears. A star, but not at home. The films came one after another. Kid auto races at Venice, The Tramp, The Gold Rush. People loved him. Crowds filled theaters just to see his walk, his hat, his mustache. But when the lights faded and the cameras stopped rolling, Charlie was alone. His mother, far away, lost in a world of silence. Sidney, working his own path. And Charlie? He was rich now. But money couldn't change the past. It couldn't erase the nights in the workhouse. It couldn't bring back the childhood he had lost. So, he did the only thing he knew how to do. He worked. Worked until the exhaustion took over. Worked until he forgot. The battle behind the camera. But success brought enemies. The studios wanted control. They wanted him to work their way. They wanted the Tramp to be theirs. Charlie fought back. "I make my own films," he said. "I write my own stories." They laughed. No actor had ever done that before. But Charlie wasn't just an actor. He was a survivor, and survivors don't let other people tell them how to live. A little boy who once had nothing, a man who now had everything, but behind the laughter, behind the fame, his greatest battles had only just begun. Chapter 6. A king without a crown. A golden city, flashing lights, a name written in the stars. Hollywood belonged to him, but behind the fame, behind the cameras, a man sat alone. Charlie stood on a film set, staring at the crowd of actors, crew members, assistants. They all waited for him. He was the director, the genius, the star. He gave a small nod. Action! And just like that, the scene began. People laughed at his movements, at his perfectly timed stumbles. They admired the way he controlled every detail. They called him a genius. But when the cameras stopped, there was silence. And in that silence, Charlie Chaplin, the king of Hollywood, felt like a man without a home. Fame, but no peace. The money poured in. His films were more than just entertainment. They were history. People loved him in London, in Paris, in New York. The little Tramp had become a legend. But something was missing. He walked through his mansion, the floors polished, the furniture perfect. He had everything he had dreamed of as a boy. So why did it feel empty? He picked up the phone. "Sidney?" His brother's voice was warm. "Charlie, it's been too long." Charlie forced a laugh. "Yes, too long." They spoke for a few minutes, but when Sidney hung up, the loneliness returned. Charlie had money, power, success. But what he didn't have was love. A heart that couldn't rest. He fell in love, fast, deep, recklessly. Actresses, dancers, women with bright smiles and dreams of their own. But love was never simple. Marriage came. Then, disaster. Fights, accusations, affairs, scandals. The newspapers had once praised him. Now they turned against him. Charlie Chaplin's marriage falls apart. Chaplin in another love affair. Hollywood's golden star. Not so golden after all. The world had loved him. Now it whispered behind his back. Charlie closed the newspaper. He had lived through hunger, through the workhouse, through nights on the streets. But this was a different kind of pain. He had built himself up. Now people wanted to tear him down. The price of being the best. His films still made millions. His name was still powerful. But Hollywood had changed. New actors arrived, new styles, new faces. People respected him, but they no longer needed him. And Charlie? Charlie was tired. The battles behind the camera, the battles in his heart, the battles with the world. He had spent his whole life running from hunger, from fear, from loneliness. But no matter how fast he ran, it always caught up. A king without a crown, a legend without a home. He had given the world laughter, but inside, the laughter had faded. Chapter 7. The Great Dictator and the Price of Truth. War, fear, a world on fire. Nations trembled, cities turned to ashes. The sound of marching boots filled the streets. People whispered in fear. Leaders stayed silent. But Charlie Chaplin? Charlie had something to say. And he would say it, no matter the cost. A man with a dangerous idea. Hollywood was supposed to be a place of escape, a place where people forgot their troubles, where laughter replaced fear. But Charlie couldn't ignore what was happening. A man had risen to power. A man with a small mustache, sharp movements, and a voice that could shake a stadium. A man who looked strangely familiar. Charlie had made his career playing the tramp, a kind fool, a man with a big heart. But this dictator? He was no fool. He was dangerous, and the world was letting it happen. The film that no one wanted. Charlie sat in his studio, staring at the script. You can't make this film, Charlie. His friends, his producers, even his closest advisors warned him, it's too risky. America isn't in the war. Why should you get involved? This will ruin you. Charlie listened, but in the end, he made his choice, because deep inside, he knew the truth. Some things were bigger than movies. Some things were bigger than money. And silence? Silence was not an option. The great dictator. And the speech that shook the world. The cameras rolled. Charlie stepped forward, wearing the uniform of a dictator. But he was not here to play a fool. Not this time. His voice was steady. His eyes burned with emotion. "I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone." His words cut through the screen. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. In theaters around the world, people sat in silence. This was not comedy. This was truth. The power belongs to the people. The film ended. The audience wept. For the first time in his career, Charlie Chaplin had done more than make people laugh. He had made them think. He had given them hope. The price of speaking out. But power does not like to be challenged. Governments turned against him. Newspapers accused him. America, the country that had made him famous, now looked at him with suspicion. Is he a communist? Is he loyal? Should he even be allowed to stay? Charlie's name was no longer golden. His films, once loved, now faced bans. And then, the final blow. A message from the U.S. government. You are no longer welcome here. Exiled. The country that had once given him everything took it all away. One speech, one moment of truth. And just like that, Charlie Chaplin was a man without a home. But was it worth it? Charlie sat alone, staring at the ocean. The waves crashed, the wind howled. Had he made the right choice? Then, somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. And Charlie smiled. Because no matter what happened next, he would never regret speaking the truth. A little boy, once forgotten, a man, now exiled. But his words would live forever. Chapter 8. Exiled from home, lost in time. One letter, one decision, and just like that, he was no longer welcome. Charlie Chaplin stood at the dock, staring at the ship that would take him away. The same ocean that had once brought him to America was now taking him back. But not by choice. His fingers tightened around the letter, cold, official, unforgiving. You are not permitted to return to the United States. Exiled, hunted. The country that made him famous had turned its back on him. But the truth? America had left him long before he ever left America. The man they no longer wanted. It wasn't sudden. It started with whispers, accusations, questions in dark rooms. Is he loyal? Does he have communist ideas? Should we trust him? Charlie had never cared about politics. He cared about people, about stories, about laughter. But after the great dictator, the world saw him differently. They didn't want his voice anymore. They wanted him gone. The FBI investigated him. The newspapers attacked him. And when he left for a trip to Europe, the government made it official. Do not let him return. Charlie Chaplin, the man who had once ruled Hollywood, was now a stranger. A star without a country. The ship pulled away. Charlie stood at the railing, watching the Statue of Liberty disappear into the mist. The irony made him smile bitterly. Liberty, for some. He had come here as a poor boy. He had built his life from nothing. Now they erased him like he had never existed. He turned away. London? It wasn't home anymore. Hollywood? Gone. So where did he belong? Fading from the spotlight. The world moved on. New stars filled the screens. New films. New faces. Charlie Chaplin, the legend, became a memory. He settled in Switzerland, far from the lights of Hollywood. His mansion was beautiful. The view breathtaking. But inside, he felt lost. For years, he had lived for the stage, the camera, the laughter. Now, there was only silence. His hands trembled as he picked up a pen. I must write again. I must create. But the world was changing. The silent films, the tramp, the old Hollywood magic. Gone. People wanted color, sound, action. And Charlie? Charlie was a man from another time. Did they forget? He heard the whispers. Is he still alive? What happened to Chaplin? He used to be great. Used to be. That hurt more than exile. Because Charlie Chaplin had spent his life making the world laugh. But now, the world had forgotten how to laugh with him. A king without a kingdom. A star without a sky. He had built an empire of laughter. But now, there was only silence. Chapter 9. The Final Bow. A poor boy. A lost child. A man who changed the world. One laugh at a time. Charlie Chaplin sat by the window, watching the snow fall gently outside. Switzerland was quiet. Peaceful. But inside, his mind was loud. Memories. So many memories. The streets of London. The workhouse. The first time he made an audience laugh. Hollywood. Success. Exile. A life of triumphs and betrayals. Laughter and loneliness. Now, His hair was silver, his body frail. But one thing remained the same. Charlie Chaplin was still a performer. And one last time, the world would remember him. A call from home. For years, America had forgotten him. Or so he thought. Then, an invitation. Come back. The Academy Awards. An honorary Oscar. A moment to say goodbye, not in exile, but in celebration. Charlie stared at the letter. His hands trembled, not from age, but from something deeper. Fear? No. It was something else. Something he had buried for years. Hope. The return. The airplane landed. Charlie stepped onto American soil for the first time in 20 years. The country that had rejected him now welcomed him with open arms. People crowded the airport. Photographers snapped pictures. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Chaplin, how does it feel to be back? Charlie just smiled, because words didn't matter. Not now. Not tonight. The final stage. The music swelled. The crowd stood. The world watched. Charlie Chaplin walked onto the stage. Slowly, carefully. He had once danced across movie sets, leapt through the air, balanced on tight ropes of comedy and tragedy. Now, every step was measured. But the audience... Oh, the audience. They clapped. They cheered. Some even wept. Charlie stood before them, overwhelmed. He had spent his life making others speechless. Now, he was the one with no words. The applause went on and on. Minutes passed. No one wanted to stop. And for the first time in years, Charlie Chaplin felt something fill the emptiness inside him. He was home. A life well lived. That night, he held the golden statue in his hands. An Oscar. Not for a single film, but for everything. For every tear, every joke, every moment of magic he had given the world. A lifetime of laughter, now held in his shaking hands. The curtain falls. Christmas Eve, 1977. Charlie Chaplin lay in bed, his family around him. The snow outside was soft, silent. His breathing slowed. The world was quiet. Then, a final breath. And the little boy who had once been cold, hungry, forgotten, was gone. But his laughter would never die. A poor boy who gave the world joy, a lost child who became a legend, a man who changed history, one laugh at a time. And so, Charlie Chaplin took his final bow. And the world still claps.